Ethan Carter was a man who had everything: money, influence, and power. He lived in a towering mansion overlooking the city, drove the finest cars, and wore suits that cost more than most people earned in a year. Yet, despite all of this, Ethan often felt alone. People smiled at him, spoke politely, and bowed to his wealth, but true friendship was rare in his world. He had learned to trust very few, and even then, he always kept one eye open. One rainy evening, Ethan was driving home from a late business meeting. The streets were slick, and the city lights reflected like scattered jewels on the wet asphalt. He was thinking about a major deal that could either make him richer or ruin him entirely. His mind was full of numbers, contracts, and strategies. As he rounded a sharp corner, a car suddenly sped from the opposite lane. There was no time to react. The sound of metal crashing and glass shattering filled the air. The world around him blurred into darkness. Ethan woke in a hospital room. Machines beeped rhythmically, monitors flashed, and the smell of antiseptic was strong. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy and unresponsive. Doctors and nurses were around him, speaking in low tones. His vision was limited, but he could see his own hand on the bed, pale and trembling. He realized with a shock that he was in a coma. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. In the next few days, Ethan listened more than he spoke. Though he could not move, his mind was fully alert. He heard his family visiting. His sister, Julia, came first. She knelt by his bedside, held his hand, and whispered tearful words. "Oh, Ethan, please wake up. We need you." But Ethan noticed the slight hesitation in her tone when no one else was looking. Her hands trembled, but he could sense an underlying concern not just for him, but for the fortune he controlled. Next came his business partners. They smiled politely, spoke softly, and promised him recovery, but their eyes betrayed them. They seemed more concerned about contracts, profits, and who would handle Ethan's empire while he was unavailable than about his health. Ethan's heart sank a little. The world he thought he controlled so firmly suddenly seemed fragile and uncertain. Among all the visitors and staff, one person stood out: Nina, a young nurse with soft brown eyes and a calm demeanor. She worked quietly, checking his vitals, adjusting the monitors, and speaking gently as if he could hear every word. She never rushed, never complained, and never seemed interested in his wealth or status. Ethan watched her carefully, curious about her intentions. She moved around the room like a gentle guardian, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt something unfamiliar: trust. By the third day, Ethan had made a decision. He would pretend to remain in a coma. The idea came to him as a game at first, a way to observe the world without being seen. But soon, it became clear that it could serve a greater purpose. By staying silent, he could uncover truths he might never have known. He could see who genuinely cared about him and who was only interested in his money. And, perhaps, he could find someone who was honest, someone like Nina. Lying there, Ethan noticed the tiniest details. He could hear whispers in the hallways, arguments over inheritance, and conversations full of hidden intentions. Nurses exchanged notes, family members whispered in corners, and even strangers who visited seemed to have a hidden agenda. Each word, each glance, became a puzzle piece in a larger picture of human behavior. One evening, as the hospital lights dimmed and the building settled into silence, Nina approached Ethan's bed. She spoke softly, as she often did, unaware that he was awake. "You're going to be okay, Mr. Carter. Don't worry. I'll be here." Her voice was warm, steady, and kind. Ethan wanted to speak, to tell her that he was awake, that he could hear her, but he forced himself to remain still. He had made a choice, and part of that choice was to test not just the world around him but also this rare honesty he had found in Nina. Days passed, and Ethan's silent observation continued. He noted how his sister Julia interacted with friends, how business partners discussed his absence, and how strangers sometimes offered condolences with a hidden smile. Every moment added to his understanding of the people around him. Yet, through all this, Nina remained consistent. She never changed her tone, never acted differently when others were watching. She was kind even when no one praised her, and attentive even when no one acknowledged her efforts. Ethan's mind wandered to memories from his past. He remembered his childhood, the first time he saw money, the first time he realized power could make people behave in strange ways. He thought of old friendships lost to greed, of lovers who only stayed for convenience, and of colleagues who bowed to him but secretly envied him. Lying in the hospital, pretending to be unconscious, he saw all these patterns repeated around him. It was as if life itself had become a mirror showing his own experiences in a new, often harsh light. One night, Ethan overheard a conversation he was not supposed to hear. Two of his business associates were discussing a new plan, taking advantage of his coma to manipulate deals in their favor. He realized how fragile his empire could be without his constant vigilance. At the same time, he saw that some people, including Nina, were working tirelessly to maintain his health and protect him without expecting anything in return. The contrast was stark and enlightening. Ethan also began to observe how patients and staff interacted with Nina. Other nurses respected her dedication, while patients found comfort in her presence. She had a rare quality: genuine empathy. Ethan felt a strange connection forming, not just admiration, but a curiosity and warmth he hadn't felt in years. He wondered what kind of person she truly was, what struggles she faced, and what made her so selfless. With every passing day, the line between observation and emotion blurred. Ethan's heart, which had been hardened by years of wealth and distrust, began to feel something unfamiliar: hope. He hoped for honest relationships, for genuine concern, and perhaps, in a quiet corner of his mind, even love. Yet he remained still, his eyes often closed, pretending to sleep, while his mind recorded every detail with sharp precision. The hospital room became a stage for human behavior. Julia's anxiety, business partners' ambition, strangers' curiosity, and Nina's sincerity all played their parts. Ethan, lying in apparent helplessness, became both observer and actor in a silent drama. He learned patience, attentiveness, and, surprisingly, humility. For a man used to commanding every room he entered, pretending to be powerless was a lesson in itself. By the end of the first week, Ethan had made a silent vow. He would continue to pretend until he had learned enough, until he understood who deserved his trust, and until he could act without regret. The coma was no longer just a disguise, it had become a tool, a window into the truth about those around him. And through it all, one thought persisted in his mind: Nina. Her honesty, kindness, and dedication had captured his attention. He didn't know if he could ever reveal himself, but he knew one thing for certain: her confession, whatever it might be, would be the key to understanding not just her, but perhaps himself as well. As the rain tapped gently against the hospital windows and the city slept, Ethan remained motionless, yet completely awake. Inside, he was alive with observation, reflection, and a growing curiosity that would soon change the course of his life. Days passed, and Ethan continued to lie still in his hospital bed, pretending to be in a deep coma. Though he showed no signs of awareness, his mind was sharp and alert. He had begun to understand the subtle rhythms of the hospital, the flow of visitors, and the true nature of the people around him. Each day was like watching a play unfold, and Ethan was both audience and secret participant. Ethan noticed that not everyone who came to see him cared about his health. Some visitors were polite but distant, smiling out of habit rather than emotion. Others whispered quietly in corners, their eyes flicking toward his room, as if they were plotting or calculating. Even his family showed cracks in their expressions. His sister Julia was torn between genuine concern and the burden of managing the estate in his absence. Ethan could see the tension in her posture, the worry lines deepening on her forehead, and the hesitation in her voice whenever she spoke to others about him. His business partners visited with their usual charm. They spoke about contracts, deals, and deadlines, always careful to keep their words measured. Yet, Ethan could hear the eagerness in their whispers once they thought no one else was listening. They spoke of temporary power, new opportunities, and the possibility of taking advantage of his incapacity. Their true priorities were revealed not in their smiles, but in the quiet moments when they thought the world wasn't watching. Among all this, Nina remained a constant. She moved through the ward with gentle confidence, never rushing, never showing annoyance, even when her shift was long. She spoke softly to him, her words filled with warmth and encouragement. "Rest well, Mr. Carter. You're stronger than you think," she said one evening as she adjusted his blanket. Ethan felt a small smile touch his lips, even though no one could see it. He had begun to admire her not just for her professional skill, but for her kindness, her patience, and the quiet way she gave her attention to everyone around her. Ethan found himself learning more about the world than he had in years. From his bed, he could hear the hidden layers of conversations, the secrets that people thought they were whispering safely. Nurses discussed their own challenges, doctors debated treatment plans in private, and visitors revealed their true feelings through words, gestures, and expressions. Ethan realized that being still and quiet gave him a kind of power he had never experienced before. He could see who was honest, who was greedy, and who was compassionate, all without revealing himself. One afternoon, while the ward was quiet, Ethan overheard a conversation that caught his attention. A young nurse, new to the hospital, was talking to another about the difficulties she faced with some patients. She complained softly about the unfair treatment of staff and the lack of appreciation from families. Ethan could see the frustration in her tone, but he also noticed the compassion that remained in her voice. She did not complain about Mr. Carter, nor did she speak of him with anything but respect. Ethan realized that even when people were frustrated or tired, the way they treated others revealed their true character. That evening, Nina stayed past her shift to check on him one last time. She spoke to him quietly, unaware that he was awake. "I hope you know someone is here for you, even when it feels like the world has moved on," she said. Ethan's mind raced. He wanted to tell her the truth, to reveal that he had heard everything, but he restrained himself. He had made a decision to wait, to continue observing, and to understand the full picture before revealing his consciousness. Over the next few days, Ethan began noticing patterns in human behavior. Some visitors showed genuine concern, bringing small gifts or speaking softly to comfort him. Others spoke only to assert their presence, to remind him of their importance, or to secure their own advantage. Even the hospital staff revealed themselves in small ways. Some were attentive only when watched, while others, like Nina, were consistent in their care regardless of who was looking. Ethan realized that honesty and integrity were rare, but they could be recognized in the smallest actions. One night, Ethan overheard a conversation that surprised him. Two of his business partners were discussing a potential takeover of one of his companies. They believed that his coma gave them an opportunity to act without resistance. Their excitement was quiet, but their intentions were clear. Ethan felt a surge of anger, but he reminded himself to remain calm. He was learning, observing, and preparing. Revealing himself too soon could undo everything he had learned about those around him. Meanwhile, Nina continued her quiet routine of care. She checked his vitals, adjusted his pillows, and spoke softly to him, often reading passages from books to keep him company. She treated him not as a patient, but as a person, someone worthy of attention and respect. Ethan began to look forward to her visits, feeling a warmth he had not experienced in years. He realized that beyond wealth and power, human connection was something far more valuable. Ethan also observed how Nina interacted with other patients and staff. She treated everyone with the same patience and kindness, never favoring one over the other. He noticed that she would stay late to help a struggling patient, comfort a worried family member, or assist a colleague who was overwhelmed. Her dedication was not performative, it was genuine. Ethan found himself admiring her more with each passing day. One afternoon, as rain fell softly outside the hospital windows, Ethan overheard Nina speaking to herself in the empty ward. Her voice was low and filled with emotion. She spoke of her struggles, financial worries, family obligations, and the weight of caring for others. Ethan felt a pang of empathy. Here was someone who had so little, yet gave so much. He realized that her honesty, even in moments of vulnerability, was what made her truly remarkable. Ethan's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. He thought about his own life, the choices he had made, and the people he had trusted. He realized that he had often prioritized wealth and power over genuine human connection. Now, lying in a hospital bed and observing the world in silence, he began to see what truly mattered. Compassion, honesty, and trust were far more important than money or status. As the days turned into a week, Ethan continued his silent observation. He noted how his family interacted when they thought no one was watching, how colleagues behaved in private, and how strangers revealed their true feelings through subtle gestures. Every detail added to his understanding of human nature, and every observation strengthened his resolve to act wisely when the time came to reveal himself. Through it all, Nina remained a beacon of light in a world full of hidden motives. Her dedication, honesty, and kindness stood out against the backdrop of greed and deceit. Ethan felt a growing sense of admiration and respect for her, and he knew that when the time came, she would be someone he could trust completely. By the end of the second week, Ethan had formed a plan. He would continue pretending to be in a coma, observing and learning from those around him. He would protect the people who were honest and expose those who were deceitful. And, most importantly, he would pay close attention to Nina, for she had revealed more about human goodness in her actions than anyone else ever had. Ethan understood that patience was now his greatest tool. He could not rush the process, for each day brought new insights, new revelations, and new opportunities to understand the people around him. The coma was no longer just a disguise, it had become a lens through which he could see the world as it truly was, without masks or pretense. As night fell and the hospital grew quiet, Ethan closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to reflect. He thought of Nina, of the lessons he had learned, and of the truths he had uncovered. He realized that his life was about to change in ways he could not yet imagine. The world had revealed its secrets to him, and he was ready to use that knowledge wisely, carefully, and with purpose. Ethan had been lying in his hospital bed for over 2 weeks, still pretending to be in a coma. Every day, he observed the world around him with quiet attention. He had learned to notice the smallest details, the twitch of an eyebrow, the tone of a voice, the hesitation before a word. Each movement and sound revealed more about the people in his life than he could have ever imagined. But despite all the secrets he had uncovered, one person remained a mystery: Nina, the nurse who cared for him so diligently. One late evening, the ward was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home, and the night nurses were busy in other rooms. Ethan lay still, his eyes half closed, listening intently. He heard the soft sound of footsteps approaching, light and careful, as if the person did not want to disturb anyone. It was Nina. She moved to his bedside, adjusting his blanket, checking his monitors, and speaking softly as she always did. But tonight, there was a tension in her voice he had not heard before. After ensuring he was comfortable, Nina stepped back and leaned against the wall. She began to speak quietly, almost to herself. "I don't know if anyone would understand," she whispered. "I try so hard to do everything right, but it never feels like enough. Sometimes I wonder if I can keep going, if I can keep helping everyone without losing myself." Ethan's heart tightened. He realized that, even while she cared for others, Nina carried her own burdens. Her confession was raw, honest, and deeply personal. Ethan's mind raced. He had heard many secrets in the past days, but this was different. This was not gossip or ambition, it was genuine vulnerability. Nina had never spoken like this to anyone, and the fact that she was willing to express her fears, even when she thought no one could hear, showed a depth of character Ethan had rarely encountered. He felt a strange mix of admiration, empathy, and protectiveness toward her. For several minutes, Nina continued speaking, her voice trembling slightly. She spoke of her family, of financial struggles that weighed heavily on her, and of personal sacrifices she had made to pursue her career. She admitted moments of doubt and fear, times when she had felt overwhelmed by responsibility. Yet beneath her words was a strength, a determination to keep going despite the challenges. Ethan listened intently, absorbing every detail. He realized that her honesty was a gift, something rare in a world full of masks and pretense. Ethan's own life had been surrounded by deception and hidden motives. He had learned to distrust people, to expect the worst, and to guard himself at all times. But Nina was different. Her confession, spoken in the quiet of the night, revealed someone who acted not out of greed or self-interest, but out of genuine care for others. Ethan wanted to comfort her, to tell her that her efforts were not unnoticed, that her courage and kindness mattered. But he could not. He had committed to staying in the coma, to observing without interfering, and revealing himself too soon could shatter the trust he had been building silently. Instead, he simply listened, letting her words sink into his mind. As she spoke, Ethan began to reflect on his own life. He thought about the people who had surrounded him, family members who had hidden motives, friends who had stayed for convenience, colleagues who had envied him. He realized how often he had been deceived, and how rare true honesty had been in his experience. Nina's confession was a revelation, not just about her, but about what he had been missing in his own life. Nina's voice grew softer, tinged with sadness. "Sometimes I feel invisible," she admitted. "Like no matter how much I give, it's never enough. I just want someone to see me, to understand me, to know that I am doing my best." Ethan's heart ached. He understood the feeling all too well, the loneliness, the desire for recognition, the quiet struggle to be seen for who you truly are. He thought about how he could help her, even without revealing that he was awake. Perhaps he could find a way to protect her, to ensure that her honesty and kindness did not go unnoticed. But he also knew that the timing had to be right. He could not act recklessly, or risk damaging the trust he had begun to place in her. For the next few nights, Ethan paid even closer attention. He observed how Nina interacted with other patients, how she went out of her way to help those in need, and how she remained steadfast even under pressure. He saw how she balanced her professional responsibilities with her personal struggles, and how she carried herself with quiet dignity despite the challenges she faced. Each observation deepened his admiration for her and strengthened his desire to connect with her in a meaningful way. Ethan also noticed the small ways Nina expressed care. She left little notes of encouragement for patients, she remembered personal details about their lives, and she often stayed longer than her shift required to ensure everyone was comfortable. These small acts, unnoticed by most, revealed a consistent pattern of empathy and integrity. Ethan realized that her character was not defined by grand gestures, but by everyday choices and consistent kindness. One evening, Ethan overheard Nina speaking to another nurse, explaining why she stayed late. "It's not about recognition," she said quietly. "It's about doing what's right, even if no one sees it. If I can make a small difference in someone's day, it's worth it." Ethan's respect for her grew even more. He realized that the world could learn from people like Nina, people who acted out of genuine care rather than self-interest. As the days went on, Ethan began to form a plan. He would continue to observe, but he would also find a way to support Nina, even if she did not know it. Her confession had touched him deeply, and he wanted to ensure that her honesty and dedication were not taken for granted. He considered small ways to help her, perhaps through subtle gestures, financial assistance, or opportunities that could improve her life without compromising her integrity. Ethan also reflected on his own transformation. Pretending to be in a coma had initially been a strategy to uncover secrets and protect his interests. But now, it had become something more. It was a way to see the world clearly, to understand human nature, and to recognize the rare qualities that truly mattered. He realized that honesty, kindness, and empathy were more valuable than wealth, power, or status. One night, as Nina left the ward, Ethan felt a strange sense of anticipation. He did not yet know how or when he would reveal himself, but he was certain that her confession had changed everything. He had glimpsed her true self, and he understood that building a genuine connection with her would require patience, trust, and care. In the days that followed, Ethan continued to listen, observe, and reflect. He noticed subtle changes in Nina's behavior, her quiet moments of doubt, her small victories, and her unwavering commitment to helping others. Each detail added to his understanding, and each observation strengthened his resolve to act wisely when the time came. Ethan's perspective on life began to shift. He realized that power and wealth could reveal character, but they could not create it. True strength came from honesty, courage, and compassion, the very qualities Nina had shown in her confession. He understood that the people who acted out of self-interest would eventually reveal themselves, while those who acted with integrity would stand the test of time. As the night grew darker and the hospital settled into silence, Ethan lay in his bed, fully awake and aware. He thought about Nina, about her fears, her struggles, and her quiet bravery. He knew that her confession was not just a moment of vulnerability, it was a window into her soul. And through that window, he had glimpsed something rare, something worth protecting, and something worth cherishing. Ethan smiled faintly, feeling a warmth he had not felt in years. The world around him was still full of deception, greed, and hidden motives, but there was also honesty, courage, and kindness. And in Nina, he had found a rare combination of these qualities, someone who was genuine, selfless, and worthy of trust. He made a silent promise to himself. He would continue to pretend, continue to observe, and continue to learn. But he would also find a way to honor Nina's honesty, to support her, and to ensure that her dedication did not go unnoticed. Her confession had opened his eyes, and he knew that the choices he made from this moment on would shape not only his own life but hers as well. And so, Ethan lay in the quiet hospital room, pretending to sleep while fully awake. He had discovered a truth far more valuable than wealth or power, the truth of human character, revealed through honesty, vulnerability, and compassion. And as he listened to the soft sounds of the night, he knew that the next chapter of his life would be guided not by ambition alone, but by understanding, empathy, and the rare gift of genuine human connection. Ethan had now been in the hospital for several weeks, still pretending to be in a coma. Every day, he observed and reflected, learning more about the people around him than he ever had before. Nina remained the constant in his silent world, her dedication and kindness shining through every gesture, while others showed their true selves in ways that were sometimes disappointing, sometimes shocking. Ethan realized that simply observing was not enough. He wanted to understand the people around him more deeply, their intentions, their loyalty, their honesty. He began to think of ways to test them subtly, without revealing that he was awake. The idea was not born of malice, but of curiosity and a need to protect what was important to him. He wanted to know who could be trusted and who could not, especially in matters concerning his family, his wealth, and his future. One afternoon, Ethan overheard a conversation between two of his relatives. They were speaking in low tones near the hospital corridor, thinking no one could hear them. "We can't let him control everything forever," one whispered. "If he wakes, we need to make sure the decisions are in our favor." Ethan's jaw tightened. He had expected greed from some family members, but hearing it so openly was painful. He made a mental note to watch them carefully, to see if they acted on their words or simply spoke out of frustration. Meanwhile, Nina continued her work with quiet consistency. She adjusted Ethan's pillows, checked his monitors, and spoke soothingly as she always did. She never rushed, even when the ward was busy, and she never complained. Ethan began to notice the small things: the way she remembered details about other patients, the way she spoke gently even when exhausted, the little ways she tried to ease the discomfort of those around her. Her care was not just professional, it was deeply personal, and it revealed a heart that was compassionate and selfless. Ethan decided to test Nina indirectly, not because he doubted her, but because he wanted to understand the depth of her character. One evening, he arranged for a small mistake to appear in his medical chart, something minor but noticeable if someone paid attention. He watched closely as Nina reviewed the notes during her shift. She noticed the discrepancy immediately and took careful steps to correct it. She did not blame anyone, did not complain, and acted quietly to resolve the issue. Ethan smiled faintly. Her actions confirmed what he already suspected: she was honest, diligent, and deeply caring. At the same time, Ethan began to test the intentions of others around him. He left subtle hints, small opportunities for people to reveal their true motives. Some colleagues tried to take advantage, speaking over each other to secure positions or gain favors. Others pretended to be supportive but were careful to position themselves for personal gain. Ethan noted every word, every gesture, and every hidden intention. It was like watching a chess game where he could see all the moves in advance, yet remain undetected. Nina, however, remained unaffected by the schemes and the subtle tests. She continued her work with dedication and kindness, showing empathy to everyone she encountered. Ethan observed her helping a worried family member, comforting a frightened patient, and guiding a new nurse patiently through procedures. Her actions spoke louder than words, and Ethan realized that true character could be measured not by what someone said, but by what they did consistently. One evening, as the ward grew quiet, Ethan overheard Nina speaking softly to herself again. "I just want to do what's right," she whispered. "Even when it's hard, even when no one notices." Ethan felt a deep respect for her. She carried burdens that were invisible to others, yet she never let them affect the care she gave. Her dedication was a lesson in integrity, patience, and courage, and Ethan knew that he had found someone extraordinary in a world full of hidden agendas. Ethan also began to notice patterns in the behavior of his family members and visitors. Some were genuinely concerned for his recovery, while others were interested only in what they could gain. He saw how greed, envy, and ambition could influence actions, even when people tried to mask them with polite words. Each observation strengthened his understanding of human nature and reinforced his decision to act carefully when the time was right. He decided to take a subtle step further. Ethan arranged for a minor issue with one of his investments to be discovered by his business partners, without revealing that he was aware of their intentions. He observed their reactions quietly. Some tried to exploit the situation immediately, revealing their true motives, while others acted with caution and honesty. Each reaction provided him with valuable insight into who could be trusted and who could not. Through it all, Nina's character remained a beacon of light. She noticed when something was wrong, she intervened gently, and she acted consistently with integrity. Ethan realized that her honesty and compassion were rare qualities, especially in a world that often rewarded ambition and greed over kindness. He began to feel not just admiration for her, but a growing desire to protect her, to ensure that her efforts and integrity were recognized and valued. Ethan's plan also involved observing how his family would react to challenges. He paid close attention to his sister Julia, noting her concern for his well-being, but also seeing the stress and occasional frustration when dealing with responsibilities in his absence. Julia's actions were more complex than he had first thought, sometimes guided by genuine care, other times influenced by the pressures of managing family affairs. Ethan made mental notes, understanding that even those who loved him could act out of necessity or fear. As the days passed, Ethan found himself learning more than he ever had in his life. Pretending to be in a coma had given him a perspective he could never have achieved otherwise. He was learning about honesty, loyalty, courage, and compassion, not just through observation, but by witnessing how people behaved when they believed no one was watching. Each day revealed new layers of human behavior, some inspiring, some disappointing, but all valuable for Ethan's understanding of the world. Ethan also began to think about how he could use his knowledge to make a positive impact. He realized that while he had wealth and power, true influence came from understanding people and guiding them wisely. By observing quietly, he could protect those who were honest, expose those who were deceitful, and create a world around him that reflected the values he now cherished: honesty, integrity, and compassion. One night, as the ward grew quiet and the city lights cast gentle reflections on the windows, Ethan watched Nina carefully. She moved with grace, her actions gentle and deliberate. He noticed how she paused to adjust the blanket for a patient who was asleep, how she whispered a few comforting words, and how she checked every monitor with precision. Ethan felt a deep sense of respect and admiration for her. She had revealed her true self in ways that could not be faked, and he knew that her honesty and dedication were rare treasures in the world. Ethan's observations also extended to the hospital staff and visitors. He noted how some nurses acted with hidden impatience, how some family members were more concerned with appearances than care, and how some visitors were polite but detached. Each action, each word, each glance revealed truths that were invisible on the surface. Ethan realized that his coma had given him a unique gift: the ability to see people as they truly were, without the masks they often wore in daily life. Through careful observation, Ethan began to plan for the future. He wanted to protect the people who were honest, guide those who were lost, and confront those who were deceitful. But he also knew that timing was crucial. Acting too soon could destroy trust, while waiting too long could allow harm to occur. Patience, he realized, was now as important as power. And all the while, Nina remained at the center of his attention. Her confession, her honesty, her kindness, these were qualities that Ethan valued above all else. He knew that when the time came to reveal himself, she would be someone he could trust completely. But until that moment, he would continue to observe, to learn, and to protect from the shadows. As the night deepened and the hospital settled into silence, Ethan reflected on everything he had seen. He had witnessed greed, ambition, deception, and self-interest, but he had also witnessed honesty, courage, compassion, and selflessness. And in Nina, he had found a rare combination of these qualities: someone who acted from the heart, even when no one was watching, and who carried herself with dignity and strength despite her struggles. Ethan smiled faintly, feeling a sense of calm he had not known in years. Pretending to be in a coma had taught him lessons he could not have learned any other way. He had discovered the truth about people, about loyalty, about honesty, and about compassion. And he knew that the next steps he took would shape not only his own life but the lives of those around him. With a deep breath, Ethan closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to reflect. He thought of Nina, of the lessons he had learned, and of the truths he had uncovered. He understood that his silence had given him a unique perspective, and he vowed to use that perspective wisely, with patience, care, and purpose. The coma had begun as a disguise, a strategy to uncover secrets. But now, it had become a tool for understanding, a way to see the world as it truly was. Ethan felt ready for the challenges ahead, ready to protect those who deserved it, and ready to act when the time was right. And above all, he felt ready to honor the honesty, courage, and compassion he had discovered in Nina, the person who had captured his attention, his admiration, and, quietly, his heart. Ethan had been lying in his hospital bed for weeks, still pretending to be in a coma. Every day had been a lesson, an opportunity to see the world and the people around him with a clarity he had never experienced before. He had discovered greed, deception, and hidden motives, but he had also discovered honesty, courage, and kindness. Among all of it, Nina had become the most important person in his quiet observations. Her honesty, empathy, and quiet strength had touched him in ways he did not expect. Now, it was time to act. Ethan had watched and listened long enough to know the true nature of the people around him. He understood which relatives could be trusted and which were motivated by selfish desires. He had observed his colleagues and business partners, distinguishing those who acted with integrity from those who acted with ambition alone. Most importantly, he had seen Nina, unwavering in her care, revealing her heart and her struggles in ways that were genuine and selfless. One morning, the hospital was unusually quiet. Ethan felt a surge of determination. He knew the moment had come to reveal that he was awake. Carefully, he moved a finger, testing the strength and stability of his body. His heart raced as he realized he could sit up slowly. He had prepared mentally for this moment, understanding the reactions it might provoke. For weeks, he had been an observer, but now, he would step into the role of an actor, and he would do so with purpose. Nina entered the room as usual, her soft footsteps echoing in the quiet ward. She adjusted Ethan's blanket, checked his monitors, and spoke gently. "Good morning, Mr. Carter. How are you feeling today?" Ethan forced himself to remain still for a moment, letting her words hang in the air. He wanted to see her genuine reaction when she realized something was different. Then, with careful precision, he opened his eyes fully and focused on her. Nina froze, her hands hovering over the blanket. Her eyes widened, and for a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. Ethan smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and amusement crossing his face. "Good morning, Nina," he said softly. His voice, calm but firm, carried a weight she had not expected. Nina blinked, then stepped back in shock. "Mr. Carter, you're awake." Her voice trembled, a mixture of disbelief, relief, and emotion. Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, I've been awake all along," he admitted. "I needed to see the truth about the people around me. And I wanted to see you, to understand who you really are." Tears welled in Nina's eyes as she processed his words. I I thought. I didn't know. I thought you were," she struggled to find words, her voice breaking. Ethan reached out, gently placing his hand over hers. "It's okay," he said softly. "You've shown me more honesty and kindness than anyone else in my life. I've seen everything, Nina. And I want you to know that I trust you completely." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Ethan's heart, which had been closed off for so long, felt lighter. Nina's sincerity and courage had broken through the walls he had built around himself. He realized that his plan to observe, to test, and to learn had led him to this moment, not just a revelation of truth, but a revelation of connection, trust, and perhaps even love. Ethan then turned his attention to the other people who had surrounded him during his coma. His family members were waiting in the room, their expressions a mixture of relief and surprise. Julia stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan. I thought I had lost you," she whispered. Ethan nodded, his gaze steady. "I've been awake, Julia. I've seen everything. And now, we have choices to make, not just about the family, but about honesty, trust, and how we treat each other from this moment forward." His business partners and colleagues were also present, their polite smiles faltering under the weight of their discovery. Ethan spoke calmly, yet firmly, outlining what he had observed, the actions of those who had acted dishonestly, and the people he had seen acting with integrity. "I now know who can be trusted," he said. "And I will ensure that honesty and loyalty are valued above ambition and greed." Throughout it all, Nina remained by his side, her presence a grounding force. Ethan felt a deep sense of gratitude toward her. She had been honest, selfless, and brave, even when she thought no one was watching. Now, she was witnessing the moment when truth was revealed, and she did so without fear, without pretense, and with unwavering integrity. As the days passed, Ethan worked to restore balance and trust in his life. He took steps to protect those who were honest, to guide those who had faltered, and to confront those who had acted selfishly. But he did so with care, wisdom, and restraint. His time in the coma had taught him patience, observation, and the value of human character over wealth or status. Nina became a central figure in Ethan's life, both personally and professionally. He recognized her dedication, intelligence, and integrity, and he wanted to ensure that her efforts were acknowledged and valued. He offered her opportunities to advance in her career, financial support to ease her burdens, and most importantly, a genuine connection built on trust and respect. One evening, as they sat quietly in the hospital room after most of the visitors had left, Ethan turned to Nina. "I have seen so much in the past weeks," he said softly. "I have seen greed, deceit, and selfishness. But I have also seen honesty, courage, and kindness. And you, Nina, have shown me the best of all of it. I am grateful for you, and I want you to know that your honesty and compassion have changed me." Nina smiled, tears in her eyes, her hand resting gently on his. "I didn't know you were awake," she admitted. "I spoke honestly because I felt safe, because I thought you couldn't hear me. I never expected this." Ethan shook his head gently. "You didn't know, but I did. And I want you to know that your trust and honesty have been the most valuable things I've witnessed in my life. You have shown me what it truly means to care for someone." With time, Ethan's recovery progressed. His body healed, and his mind grew sharper with every day. But more importantly, his understanding of human nature deepened. He had learned to value honesty, integrity, and empathy above wealth, power, or influence. He had learned to recognize true character and to act wisely when the time was right. His family, colleagues, and staff also adjusted to the revelation. Those who had acted dishonestly were confronted, their motives exposed, and lessons learned. Those who had acted with integrity were recognized, appreciated, and trusted more than ever. Ethan's life had shifted, not just because he had been awake during his coma, but because he had chosen to observe, learn, and act with wisdom and care. And throughout it all, Nina remained by his side. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, built on honesty, respect, and mutual admiration. Ethan realized that the most valuable lessons he had learned during his time in the coma were not about business, wealth, or power. They were about human connection, integrity, and love. As Ethan left the hospital, he felt a sense of peace and purpose he had never known. He looked at Nina, who walked beside him with quiet confidence, and he knew that he had found something rare and precious. The world could be unpredictable, filled with hidden motives and selfish ambitions, but with honesty, compassion, and trust, life could also be beautiful, meaningful, and rewarding. Ethan smiled, finally free from the pretense that had kept him silent for so long. He had uncovered the truth about those around him, restored balance to his life, and found a connection that was genuine and lasting. His journey through the coma had revealed the power of observation, patience, and understanding, and most importantly, the value of human character. And as he walked forward, hand in hand with Nina, Ethan knew that the lessons he had learned would guide him forever. He had discovered that true wealth was not measured in money or power, but in honesty, kindness, and the connections we build with those who truly care. And in Nina, he had found the rarest treasure of all, a person whose heart was pure, whose actions were sincere, and whose presence would change his life forever.